Hello everybody, and welcome to the last video in this tutorial series. In this video we're gonna create the main gameplay loop. Now what is a gameplay loop? In games you can think of the game having many different states for if the player has lost, if the player is still alive, or if the player is just starting the game, like the menu or something. Each of these different things are different game states. So how do we program these different game states? Well, let's first answer the question, where would we even put this? And the answer would be in our manager. Our manager is going to be the person that manages all of the game state. So, how can we create different game states and also manage them? Well, we can say something like this. We can have a variable called game state, and we can set it equal to a number. And depending on what that number is, it means a different state. So for example, if game state is equal to 0, then that means we are in the initialize phase, where you could press P to play or something. We can make game state 1 equal to the actual playing of the game phase. And finally, we can have a game state of 3, where it means it's the death phase, pretty much. So now that we have a variable that could control all of the game states, how do we actually utilize this? To answer that, let's figure out how each state should look like. So let's write down conditionals, like if the game state is equal to 0, or the initializing phase, or if game state is equal to 1, or even game state is equal to 2, then what should happen in between? For the beginning state, no enemies respawn, the player shouldn't be able to move, and a text that says press P to play should pop up. For the next game state, players should be able to move, enemies should be able to spawn, and there should be a score counter. And then finally, enemies should be able to stop spawning, the player should also be frozen, a you lost text should be present, and the ability to restart your room should be present. So, with now the idea of the game state, let's figure this out and actually code this in. So let's start with number 1. No enemy should be able to spawn, and the player shouldn't be able to move. We can't really do that within the manager, unless you deal with a lot of variables, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to go and create an actual variable of the game state, which we should do here, in the create event. Game state is equal to 0. But there's an issue with this variable. It's that only the manager can access it. What does that mean? It means that if I go to the tank, and I say game state, that means it's going to refer to the game state that OBJ tank owns, which it doesn't own any. So GameMaker is going to throw in an error because game state doesn't exist for specifically OBJ tank. Now to solve that, we're going to have to make this game state somehow global and allow other objects to access it. And to do that, you're going to type in global.gamestate. And now everyone can access this variable. So if we go back to OBJ tank and we say global game state, he recognizes that this is a real thing. So with this in mind, we need to be able to stop the player from moving when the game state is at 0. If global game state is equal to 0, then nothing happens because he won't really do anything. And we shouldn't really put all this code within here because that means he's going to be able to move while the initialization phase is on. So we're now going to create a if global game state is equal to 1, which is the actual playing. That's when we can put in all this code in there. And as for the collision, we could probably just keep it outside. So, if we try this now, the player shouldn't be able to move. And as you see, it is true. I cannot move or shoot. Now the next step is to make the enemies not spawn. And the enemies spawn within the manager, so we're just going to simply put if the global game state, if the global.gamestate is equal to 1, then we can spawn the enemies. And now if we try this, it shouldn't work. It will work, but it shouldn't spawn enemies. And now the game state 0 is completed. No enemies can spawn, the player can move. Oh, okay, press P to play. Let's draw some text. To draw some text, we're gonna go to add event, draw, and then draw. And now with this one, we could actually draw text. And to draw text, you could simply just do draw text, and then the X and Y, and what to put. So the X, we want to put it in the middle of the room, which is about here, but there's actually a better way. We can actually get the room width, and then divide by 2. And now we get the center of the room. And as for the Y, we can put it at around, I don't know, let's say 20. And then for the text, we can say press P to play. And we do notice that it's offset, so we need to center the text. In the center of the text, GameMaker has built-in functions to manipulate text. One of them is draw set H align, and then we can say FA center. And now the next step is to actually be able to press P. If global.GameState is equal to 0, if keyboard check pressed, ORD in parentheses, ORD P. Now what does this mean? Well, we saw previously that we could do keyboard check of a VK up or something, like all these constants. We can do the same with letters like P or something because the alphabets have like a different value or something. So in order for you to pass through keys, you're gonna have to use ORD and then put it in parentheses while also capitalizing it. Now that we checked if you press P, we can actually change the global game state. So now we're gonna say global.GameState is gonna equal to 1. So now when you press P, it's gonna change it to the playing phase. And now it's happening. But the P to play is still there. Let's change that. So we're only gonna draw if the global game state is at 0. If global.GameState is equal to 0, then we'll draw this. That means if the global game state is at 1, it's not gonna draw the text. And now the next step is to make a score counter. So let's actually draw a score when the global game state is at 1. If global.GameState is equal to 1, we are going to pretty much, let's just copy this code and put it here. And now we need to draw our score. So we're going to say the score, add our score. And that means we need to add a variable that keeps track of our score. We want every object to be able to access the score. So we're going to go global.score. It's going to equal to 0 because that's what you start as. And now, how do we add the score? Basically, when the enemy dies, we're going to add the score. So we're going to go to the enemy, and then we're going to go to where it dies, and then we're just going to say global.score is going to equal to global.score plus 1. And now that we have the score, we're going to have to write it down. And to do that, we can't just put global.score in here because it's in a string. So we need to add strings together. So to add strings together, well, let's just say variable here as like a reference. To add strings together, we're gonna have to go string 1 plus outside the quotation marks string 2, and this will result in a string that looks like this: string 1 and then string 2. If you want to add that space in between, we're gonna have to add it here or add it here. Either way, if you add a space, then it'll show up like this. So with that in mind, we're gonna go score plus the global.score, and now it's gonna be the score and the score. Okay, never mind. The issue with this is that you cannot add strings with numbers, so we gotta turn this number into a string. And a string is basically a sentence, I suppose. And we can't turn numbers into sentences like this. We have to use a function called string. So we're gonna string the score so that we turn the score into a sentence, I suppose. And then it wouldn't give an error. Alright, so now that we finished the game state of 1, we're gonna finally create the death. In this game, we're gonna make it like this: if the zombie reaches around this area, then you lose. Let's have the manager check that. Oh wait, actually, let's not have the manager check that. Let's have the enemy check that. So if the current X of the zombie is less than the number, a certain number, then we're gonna say global.GameState is gonna equal to 2. Okay, so what is this number? We're gonna set it equal to, let's say, about 100. And when we run the game, here's what happens. Now I can't move, the score is gone, and also the enemies just keep going until whatever. Now that we know that it works, let's actually start working these out. Enemies should stop spawning. We saw that, it works. The player should be frozen. That also worked. You lost text. We need to work on that. And the ability to start the room. We should also stop the enemies, because I think that generally looks better. So, This is the movement code for the player. We're just going to encase it in a global.gameState conditional. Global.gameState is equal to 1, which is the playing phase. And we see it works. And now it's time to write the you lose text. So we're going to go if global.gameState is equal to 2, then we'll pretty much do the exact same thing as we did with the previous 2, but just change it to you lost. And then we'll say press P to restart. And now we can go here and say if global.gameState is equal to 2, if it's at a losing phase, then if keyboard check P, which we'll just copy this basically. Then we need to restart the room so that it's going back to the original one, or back to how it originally was. And to do that, there's literally a function called room restart. So now when we play, press play, and you can shoot enemies. But when they get too close, you lose. And then we press P, it restarts. But now the issue is that song previously is playing over the top one. So we need to remove that previous sound. And that's pretty simple. We're just gonna say the audio stop, the current audio stop sound of the music, Tank Tantrum. Now when you lose, the song should be restarted. There we go. Alright, with this knowledge of game states, I want you to make the song play when the game state is equal to 1 and not when it's initializing. And I want you to make the song end when the game state is at 2. So the song stops when you lose. Okay, welcome back. Your game should look like this, where at the beginning there's no song, when you press play, the song starts. And then when you lose, the song should stop. I got rid of the audio from the create event so that it doesn't create the sound whenever you start the game. But instead I moved that sound to here. When you press P, then play the sound. If I'd done it out here, then it would have repeated forever and ever and created multiple instances of the song. So instead, I created when it changes from game state 0 to game state 1. And then, once it reaches game state 2, I just simply stop the sound. I hope you guys enjoyed this series and was able to learn a few things about Game Maker and hopefully get you started. In the next series, we will build out this game and create more complex features, like room transitions, a difficulty increasing system, and more. But that just about wraps this series, and I encourage you guys to keep messing around with this project, whether it's changing the cooldown or the speed of the enemies, and basically just turn this game to your own. And having the motivation to create your own spin on things is the only way for you to get out of tutorial hell. So yeah, thank you guys for watching.